Are we live? Yes. Well, what I'm going to do tonight is something called multi-center turning, and I'll do at least probably napkin rings and maybe an ornament turned on 3 different centers, and I'll show you how to set that up. It's in turning on multi-centers is something that a lot of you maybe have been exposed to, but unless there's something to make with multi-centers, you never get any experience with it. And once you do a couple multi-centers, it's like so many things in wood turning, it's really easy. And the way I show you, it makes it even easier. Okay, so there's nothing complicated about it. I mean, I've taught little classes in it with beginning students, and they walk away with 3 napkin rings in an hour and a half. So but it's a lot of fun, and it'll open some doors for you. Okay, now what I want to impress on you, when you do things with 3 sides, I mean, that just opens doors. You can do, you know, lamps, weed pots, pedestals, napkin rings, and you don't have to be stuck on 3 sides. You can go 5 sides or 2 sides. You can do 7, 14, you know, you can do as many sides as you want, but you know, after a while it looks round, okay? Okay, napkin rings. The first napkin rings that Sherry and I ever did, we did on kids class. Made a Morse taper, square block, round hole, slide it over, turn it. In a little while you end up with a napkin ring. Now, if you're really good, you just cut a taper, you jam it on there and it stays, and you turn it, okay? And you get off. But kids and adults like myself, it tends to walk off of there. So you make a little keeper. So now you put this on here, and now you can turn round napkin rings. So I'll just pass those around. You can see how they work. You got to have 4 hands. But what we're going to do is, well, I'm going to do napkin rings. You know, all those napkin rings that I've ever done before kind of start with a round, and you have some kind of a mandrel that you put it on, and you turn them. We're going to start, make the napkin ring, and then drill a hole through it. Because if we try to do it with a hole in it already, we might not have enough space to turn 3 sides. So, something about napkin rings. When I was out in Colorado, this gentleman was sitting down at lunch with us, and I did this demo, or he knew I was going to do it, and he was so proud of himself because he'd made 7 identical napkin rings. So then it broke his heart because I said, you know, traditionally all the napkin rings had to be a little bit different so people could identify their napkins, because people didn't used to do laundry but, you know, once or twice a year. So, you know, you had to make that napkin last, and whatever you did to that napkin was going to be with you the next meal, you know. So, so what you want to do is, this is a really easy way to make napkin rings have a common theme but a unique identifier. So I'll show you a real easy way to do that. And this is the part that we're going to go through. I turn a cylinder 2.5 inches in diameter, make a 2-inch center circle that we're going to put, I'm not using my, I don't know if I can make this work or not.
Well, will we have these instructions on our website?
I'll send these to you, yeah. And let's go with that. What doesn't work?
I'm taking a picture when you stand up. I'll have to send them to you.
Yeah, we'll send you this. But we're going to mark 3 centers on a circle. It's a 1/4 inch less than the diameter that we're using right now. And we end up drilling an 1.5 inch hole in the napkin ring. Now, when I first started doing napkin rings, I had this old English book that I knew had napkin rings in it, and I searched through that book because I wanted to know the diameter of the hole. And I looked and looked and looked for about 4 hours, and then I realized that the English spelled napkin rings servettes. And this is just a quick diagram of if you want to do 2 centers, you can't put them out on the edge because you'll turn them away. So you got to keep them in close, and it gives you a slightly different effect. But that can be real fun too. And before you start, just get yourself a compass. Draw a 2.5-inch diameter circle, draw your 2-inch circle, and then figure out what's going to happen. And if we're on this center right here, you come right across here. That's where your arc is going to get cut. Notice it cuts inside the 2-inch circle, okay? So just be aware of that. But the only thing you got to worry about is don't cut all the way through the 1.5-inch circle everywhere, okay? So we're done with this now. Okay, with most of the work I do, when I mark centers, particularly on most small spindles, unless I paid $500 for the piece of wood, I hold the pencil like this and use my fingernail to ride along the edge of the wood. And what this is the world's cheapest marking gauge, okay? And what this does is I can find the center of that little square pretty accurately. And if it's a 1/2-inch square, I mean, the worst I can be off is a 1/2 inch. You know? Okay. Well, I could be on the edge of the square, as long as I'm inside there. So I could go right there. Now, the other thing that I do on almost all small spindles, anything up to maybe even 6 inches in diameter, I use a cup drive center, okay? It's just so simple because you just take the wood and stick it on the point. Don't have to worry about driving it in. Now the wood I've got here is oak. One thing I'll say about these napkin rings, if you turn them out of green wood, they're thin, they're going to dry probably without cracking. I've done a bunch, a couple of them crack, you know, most of them don't. This is just, I think, Rudy will tell you what kind of oak it is, probably laurel oak. We'll say it's laurel oak, okay. So when you turn, I mean, if you wanted to use a limb, this would be a good project for a limb because you're going to drill the center out, so the fact that it's got the pith in there won't bother you. So, okay. I'm going to do almost all the turning on this with a bowl gouge, and I just like using the bowl gouge. If you wanted to use other tools, they'll work for most of it. I set the tool rest, so I'm cutting right at center when the tool is parallel to the floor. And we'll just start working on this. Okay, well, I'm going to just roll the tool over. I want that bevel pointing straight into the wood, and we'll just go straight in. And then we'll come over here and try to cut this side. Now, you probably thought I was roughing out a cylinder, but what I've been doing is practicing my bowl turning. Okay, this is a little bowl, okay? I just cut the sides off. Right over here on this side, that's the outside of my bowl cut. The exact same thing, except the bowl looks like this when we cut the outside of it, okay? Right here, when I take this tool and slide it in, that's my cut. That's the bevel riding push cut. Over here, we've got the inside of the bowl. Here's my bevel riding push cut. Except the bowl looks like this when I'm doing the inside. Okay. Same exact cut. If you can master that cut, it's the only one you need to do a bowl. There's more that you want to learn, but that's the only one that you have to have. And here, cutting with the left hand or right hand forward. If you want to learn to turn both ways, this is a good chance, you know, when you're just roughing something out, it doesn't matter. Now, what I'm going to do right now is I've got the bowl gouge this way. I'm just going to roll it over till it starts cutting with the wing and pull it across. Now that's just a shear cut. And that cut is one that I would use in this direction to face off the rim of a platter, for instance. Sometimes I use it on a bowl, but very rarely. Now, I've set my calipers at 2.5 inches. And what I'm going to do is just kind of arbitrarily mark off a couple of spots, 2.5 inches, and then we'll pull that tool along again and get our cylinder 2.5 inches all the way down. Now when I use the parting tool, tool's on the tool rest, the bevel's on the wood not cutting, I raise the handle and feed it over the piece a little bit. Now I'm going to have to use my calipers. So when I use it one-handed, my forefingers down the tool's under my forearm. Now, what I'm going to do now is something that will help me a little bit, and that is just, what I'm doing is looking down the top of the tool rest against the ways, and I've lined it up. So if I cut the same distance over the tool rest all the way down, I've got to get a cylinder, right? I got to cut a little more down here than up here. I can just tell by the depth here. Now, this is why we want to use this tool. What I'm going to be able to do with this tool is pick the cut up right here on the edge, off the wood and come into it. It's the only tool I know that works this way, because you've got the supporting part of the bevel over here on the wood and you can pull it in right across. If I come in, maybe that tool won't work anymore since I smashed it up there. If I try to come in with a spindle gouge right here, it's going to just tear that wood all to pieces. Okay. If I wanted to attack this piece with a skew, I'd have to cut that way and cut that way, cut that way, and work on that one little bit. But the beauty of the side ground bowl gouge, and this has to be a continuous curve all the way around. Like, the bowl gouge has to be sharpened properly. If I have a dip in here, it won't cut. It'll give me catches. Okay. So we'll start here I've got the flute pointing up, bevel's on the wood, it's not cutting, I just roll the tool and it starts to cut. And the tool handle's right in against my hip. I'm not moving my arms, I'm just shifting my weight from my left foot to my right foot. A little bump right there I'm going to take off. I've got a little knot there that I kind of slid over. Now what I'm going to do is mark off my napkin rings and I want them to be a little bit less than about 1.5 inches. So what I'm going to do is mark off 1 3/4 inches. And then when I make my parting cut, my parting tool is 3/4 or is 1/4 inch wide, and I'll take half of the parting tool for a relief cut. So I'll be taking off 3/8 of an inch. And then down here we'll make a chuck mount. Okay, same thing here. I'm going to work this way. Tools on the tool rest, raise the handle. Half the width of the tool. Now, what I'm going to, here's my 1, 2, 3 napkin rings and maybe an ornament, okay? See how ragged that cut is? For this it doesn't matter, but I'll show you a quick little trick on that. If we wanted a clean cut there, on this it doesn't matter because we're going to cut all these faces. But if your parting tool is giving you a ragged cut, if you start with it down, and Rudy would probably tell you this, the negative rake scraper, but we come up and that'll give you a nice clean cut compared to this nonsense over here. See how clean that is? Now, well, what I'm going to do at the end, I'll give you a preview. I'm going to drill 1.5 inch hole in here. And when I come through here, I want to hit air. So I want to part down in a little more than 1.5 inches. So this little piece of wood that holds it together is going to be less than 1.5 inches. So when I drill through with my 1.5 inch bit, it'll cut it clean. You'll see that in a minute, but and when you change calipers, if you release the tension, that little thing goes a lot faster. It only took me about 7 years to learn that. Okay. So I'm going to make this 1.5 inches. Okay, set 1.5 inches and then take it in a little bit more. And then we'll just part these in. Now I've got a little compass here. This is, I don't know, we bought it at Webster's for like $3. And the one right next to it was like $35, but the guy said you couldn't read this mark, so it wasn't very valuable. So he really rooked me. But it's got a fine adjustment on here. It's really cool stuff. Okay, so I'm going to set this to 1 inch. And that'll give me my 2-inch circle. And on this side, we'll do a 2-inch circle. Now, if you've got a jet, like one of the jet mini lathes, on this end you got that great big center. It's about 1.5 inches in diameter, and it comes down to about a 3/4 inch cup here. What I would do there is just leave this whole end a little bit bigger, because you want most of that center on there. So just leave that a little bit bigger. You're going to turn, I'm not going to turn this anyway. I didn't even have to rough that down, but I just got carried away. Okay, so I have that center. Now, what I want to do is decide where, what do I want to show on one of the faces. So here we've got a lot of nice rays because it's oak. So maybe we make that one of the faces. So when my napkin rings are sitting here, they'll be like this. Here you see in the cherry, you got all the little rays, okay? So if that's going to be one of my faces, we want to have a corner dead opposite it, okay? And I see I forgot one little item. Now the nice thing about these centers are they always recenter. If you have a spur center up here, it won't necessarily recenter. Okay, so we decided that's going to be the face. So what I'm going to do is just turn it straight opposite. So it's going straight out that way. And I'll draw one of my lines here. Now, what I set out to bring, and somehow didn't get in the magic bucket, is I have a little flat platform that keeps my pencil from doing this. So what I'm going to do is hold my pencil just like this so it's perfectly straight, and we'll draw our line all the way across. Because this line has to match. Maybe I need this other pencil. This is a Florida Woodturning Symposium pencil. Okay, so I have my line. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw that line down there, and that'll be one of my centers. But we need 3 more centers. So if you've got an indexing wheel, this lathe sort of has one, but you got to look down through these little holes, and it doesn't have an index wheel. An index wheel is a great big thing that you can see, and it's got numbers on it. And I would put this on. Every index wheel is divisible by 3, so they come in 12, 24, 48. Always have a 3 because people have been making 3-legged stools for years, and every lathe built has some divisible of 3. Okay, none of them have a 5. So if you want to do 5s, you got to get yourself a protractor and mark out your angles. So we got a problem here. I don't have a protractor, but I actually learned something. Now, I had seen this exact same thing done with we're not going to use this, so we can make a cut on it. It won't matter. One way to do the centers is take like dressmaker's tape, you know, with the inch marks on it. Just wrap it around, and we'd get, you know, who knows what we'd get. We get some pi times 2.5, whatever that is. That's a number. So we get, you know, you know, 13.2. We divide that by 3 and we measure around, and that gives us our things. Or we can cut a piece of paper. Now this has to be Staples computer paper. And oh, I don't like the way that did. Okay, now it comes right back together there, okay? So I'm going to remember to come in a little bit. And then, this is the hard part. I was going to have Judy do this, but what we're going to do is divide it, fold it into 3 equal parts, maybe. Huh?
Excel, make yourself a pie chart. Divided by 3, then you just stick it on the end.
Yeah, I mean, if I own this lathe, what I do is I take a piece of fiberboard and mark it and just put it over the end here, and we could. So now I have 3 sort of equal marks. Now remember, this is the part that we decided we were going to have for the face. So what I do is put a face here. Oh, I got to use my, I can't do that. I've already got my face. Okay. So what I'm doing is lining up the edge of my paper, one of my folds, right on the line that I already drew. What about my face shield? Okay, so we have that one. Okay, so we put a mark there. And here's my other mark right there. Now I've got these other 2 marks, so I'm just going to bring that line all the way down. Okay, so what we have now is we've got 3 lines. These are going to be the corners, okay? And all I need to do is take each line and draw it to the center. So I line my ruler up with the center and the line, and I make a mark across my circle. And do the same thing on the other end. And what I'm doing is I'm sighting down this ruler on my line, getting it lined up. Now, what I like to do with this project is take a little scratch awl, and this is the most dangerous part of this project, and make a little dimple. Now, with scratch awl, don't push, just twist it. It'll drill a little hole. If you push, It's going to do that, go through your finger, and you'll be bleeding all over the place. You could use a center punch if you have one. I don't have one. Huh? The main reason I know that is a professor of mathematics at the Naval Academy was in one of my classes, and he was using a flat chisel, and I always take off the nub off the end of a bowl, and I said, I even make my students repeat after me, I will not push this sharp tool towards any part of my body. And after he sliced his hand open, he said, I did just what you told me not to. Went and got 11 stitches. And he came back and said, boy, the emergency room people said, your tool is really sharp. Okay, so I'm putting, oh yeah, we should do that first. I knew I brought Sherry for a reason. Yeah, okay. Now, let's say we want to have a couple of different designs. This has a little notch, taking a little V. This has a little cove, okay? And what I can do is I can make a notch or a cove on the round part, and then when we cut the face, it'll be left on the corners, okay? I'll just pass a couple of these around. You can take a look at them. Okay, these have no finish on them, obviously. Well, actually, these have one coat of Watco. These have a little bit of finish, and just sort of pass those around. One's 5-sided. You can figure out which one that is, and then. Okay, now. So we'll just take a small spindle gouge, and we'll cut a cove on this one, a V on this one. With spindle gouge, tools on the tool rest, bevels on the wood not cutting, raise the handle, it starts to cut. And here we'll do just a V. Whoops. We'll do another V. We'll do a big V from here. Now, here's, if you really want to save a little bit of sanding and you've got a small tool, you can cut down these faces and give a nice little this tool won't quite go through there, so maybe a little point tool or something like that would do it. Now, what I would want to do right now is sand these coves, okay, with maybe 320 and well, 220, maybe 180, whatever you got to start with. If you do a really nice job with a sharp tool, you probably start with 220 because it's spindle work, and then sand those, because we won't be able to sand them. Well, you don't want to sand them later because you'll round off all the edges. Okay. Now we'll go back to where I tried to go to before. What I want to have is I measured so we'd be a ½ inch from the edge. Okay.
Should we be frightened that he's gonna hit us?
If so, but let's. Now what I'm going to do is set the tool rest. Now what I'm going to do is that same cut that I did for my roughing, but very lightly. Oh, I don't know. It says 800. Who cares? Now what I'm going to do is stop the lathe, and what I'm looking for is right here, the distance I am from my line, okay? And I'm about the same distance over here. That's a good thing. If I did it perfectly, that's right on the corner, but it almost never is, okay, because I'm not that precise. Okay, so I need to go down another ½ inch. Is that light in anybody's way? Okay, we're getting close. I'm walking uphill. This is further away up here, so I'll come back. And I'm just going to take a little bit off of my kind of waste piece down here, just so I don't hit it accidentally. Okay. Now, I still have to come down a little bit more. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start using that nice little pulling cut. And I just stop to see how close I am to my line. I'm getting closer. I still see a line on both sides. Okay, right at the line there, a little over the line there, so take a little bit off of this one. Okay, so kind of where we are right now is kind of where we are on this one. So we'll switch centers. And now we'll cut another face.
Like you sand your notches as you go. Do you sand your faces as you go?
Hmm?
Do you sand your faces as you go?
I don't generally, because it rounds the edges over too much. What you could, I mean, what I'll do when I get it all done is we'll sand each face. Okay, a little bit more. And then we'll just do that pull cut. And I'm going to take a little bit off of this that I forgot to do so I don't pull into it. And, you know, when I come off here, it's going to make me not be able to cut that one. Okay, we're still not, we should meet, okay, right here, we're almost at a corner. I took a little more off this one. So come back here, we got to take those down. You still missed right here just a little bit. Right here, we've got too much of a line there. So, and I haven't quite, I may have to put it back on the other center and cut it. I'm going to try one more this way. Okay, so now we've got a nice little corner coming all the way down. So maybe I'll cut a little bit more off this one right here on the end. And now for the last center. Now one thing you want to be sure you do with these pieces is not use punky wood because if what I'm going to do is just I didn't make this enough, so I'm not able to get I want my center to slide onto it. It's important it's sort of in the right spot. No, this is just a plain dead center. A steb center would be fine. The problem with a steb center is, and let me just run over that one time real quickly. If I'm using my, how many have index wheels on their lathe? Okay, you guys pay attention. The rest of you don't. Okay. When I get this thing, before I lay it out, okay, because I've got this round center here, I'm going to use, on my index wheel, I'm going to use 0, 16, 32, and 48, which is back to 0 again, okay? So if I want my line to be here, what I do is I set my index at 0, loosen this, and I just turn this. Now I've got this, the grain lined up with 0 on my index wheel. You can't do that with a steb center. You can't do it with a spur center. You can only do it with a round cup center. Okay? Now, a steb center sort of goes back where, see, it's like a 25 tooth spur center, sort of, okay? So it's going to go back in those little grooves that it cut the last time, those 25 or whatever. So it's only got those 20, you know, and if it's not, once you've dropped it twice, the 25 on this side aren't the same as the 13 on the other side. But step centers are really great. Sherry loves step centers. And you get a step center for this end too. Okay, we're almost getting here to where we're gonna finish this up. Almost here. Okay, now we'll put a tenon on here for the chuck. Now, here's a good time. Right now I could sand these with a little block of wood with sandpaper on it or whatever. What I would do is be very careful not to roll these corners over. If I hold sandpaper, I'll just roll the corners over. I just use a little disc sander. I sand them by hand after I'm all done.
Little sanding blocks for drywall, terrific.
Yeah, yeah. Also, anyway, and I think if you were going to do these in production mode, what I'd want is one of those little oscillating things to sand the inside, and I'd probably do all the outside on a little 6-inch disc sander. Okay, I'm going to make my chuck mount back here. And take my little spindle gouge. What I'm going to use is a little dovetail on a one-way chuck. And I've cut this a little too long, I think. Now, one thing I like about this little chuck, then I just take it out. Just remember, don't put your finger down in there. Back when I was doing a lot of Christmas ornaments to sell, I was sure that that feature saved me 23 seconds a day.
We're impressed now.
Just make sure that that center lined up, which it should have. Now, on this one, we've got a little issue, okay? We've got all those center points. That's going to look ugly in the end of a napkin ring, right? So what I'm going to do, we'll make them disappear. I'm just going to cut kind of a... Now this is something where you kind of putting the tool on air, but the little bit of wood there, and then you roll into it, just like it was solid wood. And I don't think they're gone yet, just because I'm never that lucky. Okay, I've got a little point there. Ah, okay, that could be a wormhole. Let's put a little black stuff in it. Now this is an 1.5" Forstner bit. I checked the Wholesale Tools website, like $4.50. Or you can go to Woodcraft. 18? I mean, you can buy one, you know, these can, you can spend anywhere from $4 to $45, I'm sure. Now, if I had one of those big white lays, I could keep going because it's got a much longer. Yeah. Well, one thing with the the wet wood, it's
How good was that oak?
it's wet. Oh, I don't know. I think this, I've had this one a long time, so I don't know. It's not one of the $4 ones. Okay, here's where I did that on purpose. I'll show you in a little while. You think you're just laughing. No, I didn't cut my, didn't get quite far enough in with my. Now, you can do these with dry wood. I just didn't want to make all the dust. Cherry works great for these. Yeah, one of the things I do is, some of you may know James McClure. He's a wood turner in Pensacola. And he used to raise bees. But fortunately, before he gave his bees up, he gave me a lifetime supply of beeswax. And I got these little, whatever, the fake butter comes in, those things full of beeswax. So. But a little beeswax on this bit will keep it from smoking. Cherry's still going to burn, but cherry burns just when you look at it. But okay, now. Okay, so we got to deal with this a little bit. There's a couple ways we can do that, and I'll see. The first way might work. What I'm going to do is turn this wood down and just jam it on there. Maybe. So go a little spindle gouge. And what I'm going to do, I'm cutting just a taper. Okay, that burnished it. And where it's burnished, I'm going to cut back. And then we'll see if it goes on. Nope. That was good. Okay. Missed my little spot. I made it a tiny bit too big. Yeah, my paper towels with the other thing. Okay, that was a little too big. So now I can come back and clean that up. And I can sand the inside. Now I won't be able to get this off because... Now normally what happens, if you sand that side, you've made it smaller, you have to use the... Well, this side's going to fit tight, okay. So now we can turn this... I guess the wood expand it a little bit. Okay. So we can work both sides now with... I know most of you still remember Don Doyle. He's only been gone a couple of months. But Don made me this little guy. Now he's got really nice ones now that have little steps so the jaws fit them nicely. This is kind of, I told him I'm going to sell this on eBay because it's one of a kind. He hand cut this thing. Okay. Well, what it's got in the new ones, the super duper ones, you can tighten this bolt from either end, but this one's kind of the economy model. Okay, so I can put my napkin ring on here and tighten that. And now I can sand it, turn it, do anything I want to with it. Okay, that's a really cool little gizmo. Now, okay, so we've got these napkin rings, and I'll just pass these around. Did the other one start around somewhere? Yeah. Yeah, just go ahead and pass those around. You can see they're still wet. What I would do is let them dry for a couple of weeks and then sand them and finish them up. Now, let's say we want to make one of these Christmas ornaments. Okay. Well, we got to drill a hole in here. Okay, I'd want to have that a little cleaner. We could put that on there and clean it up a little bit. Don said I should buy a T-handle that fits this, but I'm too cheap. Yeah, if he had any sense at all, he would have made it 4 millimeters, right? So all the chuck things would fit it. I don't. All right. Anybody else want to give me some advice? Well, this is... And which one of them knows where I left the chuck key?